Life can change in an instant, sometimes at home, where safety feels certain, other times in the most ordinary places, a walk to school, leaving work, outside a friend's house, or even within a marriage once built on trust. In those moments, the world shifts without warning, and ordinary women are thrust into extraordinary nightmares, forced to make impossible choices, to fight, to endure, or to wait for the smallest chance to flee. Yet in their darkest hours, when all hope seemed lost, what emerged was not just pain, but a resilience so powerful it defies imagination. Disclaimer: the following stories are true. They involve kidnapping, mistreatment, and the struggle to survive. Some content may be disturbing, especially for sensitive viewers. We share these accounts with respect and to honor the bravery of those who endured them. In September 1978, the world of a 15-year-old girl named Mary Vincent changed forever. She was just a teenager, caught in the chaos of her parents' messy divorce, and like many kids her age, she was restless, looking for somewhere to belong. That search led her to run away from home in Las Vegas and try to make her way to her grandfather's house in Berkeley, California. Alone, exhausted, and vulnerable, she turned to the only option many runaways had at the time: hitchhiking. On the side of a road near Modesto, California, she stood with her thumb out, hoping for kindness from a stranger. That stranger came in the form of 51-year-old Lawrence Singleton, a former merchant seaman driving a blue van. At first, he looked harmless, an older man who could have been anyone's neighbor, father, or uncle. Mary hesitated, sensing something wasn't right. But when he insisted he was safe and claimed he had a daughter of his own, she climbed in. She couldn't have known she was stepping into the hands of a monster. The ride began like any other, but Mary's unease grew. Singleton ignored her directions, deliberately driving off course. When she tried to escape, he struck her and knocked her unconscious. Hours of unimaginable horror followed. Singleton bound her tightly, removed her outer garments, and subjected her to repeated attacks throughout the night. Mary cried, begged, and pleaded, but he was unmoved. His cruelty only escalated. And then, the next morning, came the words that would haunt her forever. "You want to be set free? I'll set you free." Singleton dragged Mary out of the van, produced a hatchet, and in one of the most brutal acts of violence imaginable, he severed both of her forearms. He threw her uncovered and bleeding body down a 30-foot ravine, leaving her to die. But Mary did not die. Somewhere deep within her, a voice screamed louder than the pain. She later recalled thinking, "I can't go to sleep. He's going to do this to somebody else. I can't let that happen." With staggering willpower, Mary pushed herself to act. She packed the gaping ends of her arms with dirt to slow the bleeding. She forced herself to stand, and then, step by agonizing step, she crawled and climbed her way out of that ravine. 30 feet of sheer determination. Weak, uncovered, and barely conscious, Mary made it to the roadside. She staggered for nearly 3 miles before managing to flag down a passing car. The horrified couple who stopped later described her staggering toward them, holding her arms upright so that her muscles and blood would not spill out. They rushed her to a hospital, saving her life. Even in the hospital, Mary refused to collapse into despair. She insisted on working with police and a sketch artist immediately, fighting sleep so she could help create a composite drawing of her attacker. Her description, combined with evidence, led to the arrest of Lawrence Singleton. When the time came for court, Mary walked into that courtroom wearing her new silver prosthetic arms. In front of the jury, she raised one of them and pointed directly at Singleton. Her voice, though young, was steady. "I was attacked. I was harmed, and my hands were cut off. He used a hatchet. He left me to die." It was one of the most unforgettable moments in courtroom history. Singleton was convicted of attempted murder, mayhem, kidnapping, and multiple counts of criminal acts of a sexual nature. The maximum penalty under California law at the time was just 14 years. Outrage spread across the state when he received that sentence, and even more when he served only 8 years before being released. Mary had warned that if he was ever freed, he would hurt someone else. Singleton even whispered to her in court that he would finish the job when he got out. Tragically, her fears came true. In 1997, nearly 20 years later, Singleton murdered 31-year-old mother of 3 Roxanne Hayes in Florida. This time, he was sentenced to death. But before he could face execution, Singleton died of cancer in prison in 2001. For Mary Vincent, the scars, both physical and emotional, never fully faded. For years, she struggled with nightmares and the weight of knowing her attacker had been released to harm again. Yet she refused to let him define her life. She became a powerful advocate for victims' rights, sharing her story, testifying before legislative bodies, and fighting for sentencing reform. Her courage led to changes in California law, increasing penalties for violent crimes like Singleton's, reforms that became known informally as the Singleton Bill. Mary also rebuilt her personal life. She embraced art, teaching herself to draw and paint, using her prosthetics, and even creating her own custom tools from spare electronics and household parts. Her pastel drawings, often depicting strong, empowered women, became a reflection of her own resilience. Today, living in Washington State with her husband and their children, Mary has turned tragedy into testimony. She's no longer just a survivor. She's an advocate, an artist, and a voice for those still struggling to find their strength. Her survival was not just about endurance. It was about transformation. Against the odds, against the violence meant to silence her, Mary Vincent stood back up. And through her, we see the clearest proof of all. Even in the face of cruelty beyond comprehension, the human spirit can endure. But the next survivor's story begins not on a dusty California highway, but in the quiet safety of a suburban home, where a teenager thought she was untouchable. She was wrong. In June of 2002, the world of 15-year-old Cara Robinson shifted forever. It was an ordinary summer day in West Columbia, South Carolina. Cara was staying at her best friend's house, watering plants in the front yard, when a Pontiac Trans Am pulled into the driveway. The man who stepped out looked unremarkable. Jeans, a button-down shirt, a baseball cap, and pamphlets in his hand. He asked questions about her parents, about the house. At first, Cara thought little of it, but in a split second, his demeanor changed. He pressed a gun to her neck and forced her into a large plastic storage bin in the back of his car. Imagine being 15, standing in the safety of a friend's yard, when the illusion of normalcy shatters in an instant. What would you do? Would you freeze in terror, or would you begin plotting your survival from inside that plastic box? Her abductor was 38-year-old Richard Evenitz, a man whose quiet exterior hid monstrous secrets. During the drive, as the air inside the container grew thin and her fear threatened to overwhelm her, Cara made a decision. She would not let panic rule her. Instead, she began cataloging everything she could. The serial number stamped on the plastic bin, the number of turns the car took, and the radio station playing in the background. Every detail, no matter how small, could be a breadcrumb to lead police back if she made it out alive. When they reached his apartment, Kara's nightmare escalated. Evanitz bound her, gagged her, and over the next 18 hours, subjected her to repeated assaults. Yet even in the depths of horror, Kara clung to a mantra she repeated silently to herself. Gather information. Wait for him to be complacent. Escape. It was not just a thought, it was her strategy, her lifeline. Inside his cluttered home, she observed everything with the eye of an investigator. Magnets on his refrigerator, the smell of the room, and the caged animals he kept. She even offered to help him clean the apartment, creating small cracks of trust that she could later exploit. She wasn't just surviving, she was planning. And then, the chance came. Evanitz fell asleep, confident in his control. With steady determination, Kara wriggled one hand free from the cuffs using her teeth, unclipped the restraint on her leg, and tiptoed to the door. She unlatched 2 locks, bolted into the parking lot, and ran toward freedom. She later recalled that all she could think was, "He's going to shoot me in the back, but at least someone will find him." But Kara didn't just escape, she outsmarted him. When police arrived, she guided them back to his apartment, providing an overwhelming account of what she had seen inside. Her memory proved sharper than anyone expected. And as investigators dug deeper, they discovered that this was not just a kidnapping. This was the lair of a serial predator linked to 3 murdered girls in Virginia, Sophia Silva and sisters Kathy and Kristen Lisk. What makes a teenager, barely old enough to drive, capable of such composure in the face of certain death? Was it instinct, fate, or something deeper? The sheer refusal to let her story end at his hands. For Evanitz, justice never came through the courts. Days after Kara's escape, as police closed in on him during a high-speed chase in Florida, he killed himself rather than face accountability. But through Kara's courage, families devastated for years by unanswered questions finally had the truth. Her survival ended his cycle of violence. And Kara herself, she transformed her pain into purpose. She pursued a career in law enforcement, working as a school resource officer and an investigator on child abuse and sexual assault cases. Later, as a mother of 3, she shifted her mission outward, becoming an advocate, a speaker, and a voice for survivors everywhere. She's told her story through documentaries, podcasts, and public appearances, determined to turn trauma into testimony. But as Kara once reflected, survival is not just about escaping the moment, it's about what comes after. How do you rebuild when you've seen the face of evil up close? How do you carry both the weight of your own scars and the knowledge that your escape revealed a serial killer? Her story forces us to confront unsettling questions. How many others were lost before Kara? How many more might there have been had she not fought so fiercely for her life? And in the end, Kara Chamberlain's case reminds us of one chilling truth, that sometimes the only thing standing between life and death is the will to endure, the courage to think clearly when terror wants to consume you, and the determination to never give up. But her story is only one of many. Because just days after Kara's escape, another teenager, also just 14 years old, would be taken from the safety of her own bedroom in Utah. She wouldn't escape in 18 hours. She would endure 9 long months in captivity. And her name, Elizabeth Smart. It was the middle of the night, June 5th, 2002. The Smart family home in Salt Lake City, Utah, was quiet, wrapped in the kind of peace that makes a parent feel their children are safe. 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart was curled beneath her blankets, fast asleep beside her 9-year-old sister, Mary Catherine. For her mother and father, asleep down the hall, there was no reason to suspect that danger was anywhere near their home. But that night, evil slipped silently through the walls of safety. Elizabeth stirred awake to a man's shadow looming over her bed, cold steel pressed against her throat. A voice, low and urgent, whispered, "I have a knife at your neck. Don't make a sound. Get up, or I'll kill your family." In that moment, everything she knew shattered. Imagine being 14, your sister breathing softly beside you, your parents asleep nearby, when suddenly the world becomes a nightmare. Would you scream? Would you risk your family's lives to try and save yourself? Or would you rise, trembling, and obey? Elizabeth obeyed. She slipped out of bed, while Mary Catherine lay frozen, unable to move, her small body paralyzed by terror. The intruder led Elizabeth out of the room, through her own home and into the darkness beyond. The man was Brian David Mitchell, a self-proclaimed prophet who believed he was carrying out a divine mission. Waiting for him was his wife, Wanda Barzee, equally devoted to his delusions. Together, they dragged Elizabeth up into the mountains behind her home, to a makeshift camp hidden among the trees. There, her nightmare deepened. Mitchell performed a twisted ritual, declaring Elizabeth his wife. She was forced into long robes, veils that covered her face, and heavy chains. For 9 months, this would be her world: isolation, control, and abuse. But even in captivity, Elizabeth's mind searched for survival. What does it take for a child, barely into her teenage years, to endure such horror? Is it faith, instinct, or something deeper? The refusal to let another human being define the end of your story. While Elizabeth was hidden in the mountains, her family was plunged into agony. When her mother Lois walked into her daughter's room that morning and found the bed empty, her heart shattered. A parent's worst nightmare had become real. The search began immediately. Police combed the neighborhood, dogs tracked scents, and volunteers spread out across Salt Lake City. Elizabeth's face appeared on posters, in newspapers, and on national television. For her parents, every morning meant waking up with the crushing weight that she was still gone. Every night meant closing their eyes and wondering if their daughter was still alive. And for little Mary Catherine, the last person to see Elizabeth alive, that night replayed again and again. What could she have done? Why hadn't she screamed? That guilt weighed heavily on a child too young to understand that survival sometimes means silence. Weeks later, in a moment of clarity, she remembered the voice. The man who had taken Elizabeth was Brian David Mitchell, a drifter who had once done handyman work for the family. That revelation gave the investigation a new direction. But still, Elizabeth remained hidden. Back in the camp, Mitchell controlled every part of her existence. He told her the world would never recognize her, and terrifyingly, he was right. He led her in public, through libraries, down busy streets, even in broad daylight, dressed in robes and veils. People walked past her without a second glance. Think about that for a moment. How many times have we looked past the faces around us, never imagining one of them could be a missing child? How many lives might be hidden, in plain sight, overlooked because we aren't expecting to see them there? As months dragged on, Elizabeth's captivity became a cycle of fear, manipulation, and endurance. But she clung to fragments of hope. In the silence of the night, she prayed. She remembered her family's love, and she made an unspoken promise. She would not let Mitchell erase who she was. Then, on March 12, 2003, everything changed. Walking with Mitchell and Barzee in Sandy, Utah, Elizabeth was spotted by concerned witnesses. Her photo was still fresh in their minds, and something about the girl in the veil made them call police. When officers arrived, they questioned the group. Elizabeth hesitated. After 9 months of conditioning, fear gripped her throat. If she admitted the truth, would Mitchell retaliate? Would her family pay the price? What would you do after months of being told your voice could kill the people you love? Would you dare to speak? And yet, courage won. Elizabeth was identified, and the truth finally came to light. She was alive. She was going home. The reunion with her family was nothing short of miraculous. For her parents, it was the moment they had prayed for every single day. For Mary Catherine, it was the return of the sister she thought she had lost forever. But Elizabeth's story did not end with freedom. In many ways, it was only beginning. Brian David Mitchell was arrested, tried, and sentenced to life in prison. Wanda Bazi, too, was eventually held accountable. Justice came slowly, but it came. As for Elizabeth, she refused to be defined by the 9 months of terror. She transformed her pain into purpose. She became a powerful voice for survivors of abduction and sexual assault, founding the Elizabeth Smart Foundation and dedicating her life to advocacy. She has spoken before lawmakers, appeared in documentaries, written books, and stood as a symbol of resilience. Her story forces us to ask questions that linger uncomfortably in our minds. How safe are our homes, really? How many children fall prey to those we once trusted? And how do families survive the unthinkable, the waiting, the not knowing, the endless ache of a missing child? For women especially, Elizabeth's story touches something deeper: the instinct to protect, the bond of motherhood and sisterhood, the fear of losing a child in the one place they should always be safe, their own bed. Elizabeth Smart's case reminds us that survival is not only about enduring the moment of terror, it's about the long road after. It's about rebuilding, reclaiming, and refusing to let trauma silence you. And in the end, her courage teaches us something unforgettable: that even in the darkest captivity, when hope seems lost, the will to live and the strength of love can light the way home. It was the night of September 27th, 1992. 19-year-old Jennifer Asbenson was working as a nurse's aide in Cathedral City, California. She had a shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., caring for disabled girls at a nearby hospital. On her way to work, she missed her bus while buying candy for the children. It was a small act of kindness, one she thought little about, but it set into motion a series of events that would change her life forever. As she stood outside, anxious about being late, a man pulled up in a car. He seemed ordinary enough. His name was Andrew Urdiales. He offered her a ride. At first, Jennifer said no, but as he started to drive away, she reconsidered. She was young, running late, and didn't want to lose her job. She accepted. The ride seemed harmless. He said a few strange things, but nothing that set off alarm bells. When he dropped her at work, he asked for her phone number. Jennifer didn't feel comfortable giving it, so she scribbled down a fake one and hurried inside. She thought nothing of it, but Urdiales didn't forget. Hours later, just after 6 a.m., Jennifer finished her shift and stepped outside into the cool morning air. There, parked and waiting, was the same car. Her heart sank. She hadn't told him where she worked. How had he found her? She tried to ignore him, walking quickly, but she could hear the sound of gravel crunching under his tires as he slowly rolled behind her. "I didn't even have to look," she later recalled. "I knew it was him." At 19, Jennifer was painfully naive. She had grown up without electricity, without television, sheltered from stories of serial killers or the dangers that lurked in the world. She didn't yet know the monster she had just encountered. Urdiales invited her to breakfast. She laughed it off. He offered her a ride home instead. Wanting to get away, she accepted. But the moment she got inside, everything changed. His friendly demeanor evaporated. He brought up the fake number, his voice cold and sharp. Suddenly, his hands were on her. He tied her up. He gagged her. He cut off her clothes. Jennifer was trapped. Imagine being just 19, a teenager still figuring out the world, and realizing the man behind the wheel is not only dangerous but deadly. What do? Do you fight? Do you beg? Or do you search for the tiniest chance to survive? Urdiales was already a serial predator. By the time he crossed paths with Jennifer, at least 7 women had already lost their lives to his violence. She was supposed to be next. He beat her. He bit her neck so hard she bled. He dragged her across rocks and cactus, threw her into his trunk, and slammed it shut. Jennifer lay there, bound, half naked, the weight of her own mortality pressing down on her. But instead of surrendering, she began to plan. She worked at the restaurants until her wrists bled. She waited for the car to slow. She listened for any chance, any pause in his control. And then, with sheer willpower, she broke free. She unlatched the trunk and threw herself into the open desert air. Barefoot, injured, and terrified, Jennifer ran. Behind her, Urdiales grabbed a machete and chased her through the dust. Can you imagine that moment? Every breath screaming for survival, every step echoing the thought, if I fall, I die. On a lonely highway, she flagged down a truck. Inside were 2 Marines. They pulled over. They saw the terror in her face, the blood, and the bruises. They saved her. Urdiales fled into the distance, escaping justice for the time being. But Jennifer lived. Her escape was nothing short of miraculous. Yet survival wasn't the end of her story. It was only the beginning, because for years her testimony stood alone. Police had almost no evidence. The bite on her neck and the description of her attacker, everything else was gone. Even the tire tracks that might have proved his presence were erased by a bulldozer that passed by the desert road. And so, Jennifer carried the weight of survival while Urdiales continued to kill. For 3 years, he stopped, paranoid that Jennifer's escape would expose him. But by 1995, he struck again. Denise Maney was murdered in the desert. Others followed. In total, 9 women were confirmed victims of Andrew Urdiales. It wasn't until 1997 that Urdiales was finally arrested. And it wasn't until 2018, over 25 years later, that he was sentenced to death for his crimes. Just months after that sentence, he killed himself in prison. For Jennifer, his death closed one chapter, but she never let him define her. On the 24th anniversary of her abduction, in 2017, she returned to the desert with a friend, a chair, and a camera. She sat in the same wilderness where he had almost killed her and demonstrated how she had broken free from her restraints. Then, looking into the lens, she told her story in her own words, turning terror into testimony. What gives someone the strength to endure such horror and then come back to the very place it happened? Is it courage, defiance, or is it the refusal to let an evil man steal any more power from her life? Jennifer went on to build a life. She became a speaker, an advocate, a survivor who turned trauma into something that could help others. Her voice joined the chorus of women who remind the world: survival is possible, Her story forces us to ask questions we don't always want to face. How many predators hide in plain sight, appearing normal until it's too late? How many young women accept rides, trusting a stranger, never imagining it could be the last choice they ever make? And perhaps most chilling, how many lives could Andrew Urdiales have claimed if Jennifer Asbenson had not fought so hard to escape? Her survival reminds us all of one haunting truth. Sometimes the only thing standing between life and death is the will to fight back, even when every odd is against you. Jennifer's terror lasted hours, but Michelle's nightmare stretched for years, captured, isolated, and fighting to survive. What gave her the strength to endure, and how did she finally escape? We'll reveal her story next. If these stories resonate with you, we'd love for you to support the channel by giving this video a like, sharing it with someone who cares about these cases, and subscribing so you don't miss the next story. Every bit of support helps us keep these voices alive. August 23rd, 2002, began like any other morning for 21-year-old Michelle Knight. She had just left her cousin's house in Cleveland, Ohio, preparing for a court appearance to fight for custody of her young son Joey, who was in the state's care. Michelle carried hope in her heart that morning, determined to reclaim some semblance of normalcy. Yet fate was cruelly waiting. As she walked through familiar streets, a shadow followed. Ariel Castro, a man whose twisted life of abuse, control, and obsession had been quietly festering for decades. Within moments, Michelle's world would be turned upside down. Castro would force her into a nightmare that would last more than a decade. He kidnapped her, taking her to the upper floor of his house on Seymour Avenue. There, he tied her hands and feet and left her suspended, alone in darkness for 3 days without food. Michelle's captivity was brutal. Castro controlled every aspect of her life, locked in windowless rooms, fed one meager meal a day, and forced to shower only twice a week. Diaries recovered from the house revealed the horrors endured by his victims: forced sexual conduct, constant threats of death, emotional and physical abuse, being treated like a prisoner of war, chained to walls, and dreams of escape that seemed forever out of reach. The torment continued in unspeakable ways. Michelle endured multiple pregnancies at Castro's hands, each ending in miscarriage induced by brutal beatings. Her body suffered unimaginable trauma. She would later require facial reconstruction surgery, and she lost hearing in one ear. Even small moments of comfort, like caring for a pet dog, ended in heartbreak when Castro snapped its neck after it tried to protect her. Yet despite the unrelenting cruelty, Michelle's spirit did not break. The years passed in darkness, punctuated by impossible moments of forced obedience. On Christmas Day 2006, she was forced to assist in the birth of Amanda Berry's child in a small inflatable pool, under threat that the baby's survival depended entirely on her compliance. The ordeal tested her every limit, yet Michelle's courage and resourcefulness allowed her to save the child. Throughout the years, the world largely remained unaware. Police devoted limited resources to her case, often assuming she had left voluntarily. Tips were few, and 15 months after her disappearance, her name was removed from the National Crime Information Center database. For over a decade, Michelle Knight existed in near anonymity, a young woman trapped, invisible, and suffering beyond imagination. It was not until May 6, 2013, that freedom finally came. Amanda Berry managed to escape with her 6-year-old daughter, alerting neighbors and bringing the authorities to the house. Michelle, seeing the police through a slightly open bedroom door, leapt into their arms, finally safe after 11 years of unimaginable torment. Ariel Castro was arrested almost immediately, and in a case that shocked the nation, he pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including kidnapping, rape, and aggravated murder for the pregnancies that ended in miscarriage. In August 2013, he was sentenced to life in prison plus 1,000 years without parole. Less than a month later, he was found dead in his prison cell, an ignominious end to a life defined by cruelty. For Michelle Knight, life after captivity was a struggle to reclaim normalcy. She worked tirelessly to rebuild her relationships, find stable work, and advocate for victims of abduction and abuse. Her story has since become one of resilience and survival, inspiring countless others who have faced unimaginable trauma. Michelle eventually regained custody of her son, Joey, and has spoken publicly about the importance of healing, self-worth, and never giving up, even in the darkest of circumstances. Michelle Knight's story is a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a chronicle of survival against overwhelming odds. But while one nightmare ended, the world of abductions remained ominously near, with another chilling tale of terror waiting quietly in the shadows. Terry Gents, a woman whose life would also be shattered by a sinister stranger, would soon face her own unimaginable ordeal, one that would challenge our perceptions of safety and the darkness lurking behind ordinary lives. In the summer of 1977, 19-year-old Terry Gents from Illinois and her 20-year-old roommate, Avra Goldman from Massachusetts, set out to ride the newly opened Trans-America Trail, a cycling route stretching coast to coast. Oregon was their starting point. It was rugged, beautiful, and lonely, the kind of place where beauty and danger lived side by side. On June 22nd, they stopped at Klein Falls State Park near Redmond. They pitched their tent by the riverbank, trying to sleep under the whisper of trees and the rush of water, but unease gnawed at them. Terry later said she felt an animal instinct of danger. Avra felt it too. They both admitted it, but brushed it off. After all, what could really happen out there in the middle of nowhere? Around 11:30 that night, the stillness was shattered. A truck pulled into the campsite, its headlights slicing the dark. Terry thought it might just be local kids fooling around, but the headlights didn't stop. They bore down on the tent, and in a sudden burst of horror, the truck drove straight over them. Terry was pinned, her chest crushed, both arms broken, one leg shattered, ribs splintered, and her lung collapsing. Avra screamed, trapped in the wreckage beside her. The driver cut the engine, stepped out, and into the glow of the lights came a man with an axe. He turned first to Avra. The blade rose and fell, again and again, striking her head 6 times. Terry, bleeding and broken beneath the tires, could only watch. When he turned to her, she begged through the blood and the pain. "Take anything," she whispered, "but leave us alone. Please, leave us alone." The man lowered the axe slowly toward her chest. Terry caught the blade with her bare hands, stopping it just above her heart. And then, whether startled, conflicted, or afraid, he withdrew. Without a word, he climbed back into his truck and drove away into the dark. 2 young women lay mangled, but still alive. And against all odds, Terry forced herself to move. She staggered from the campsite, bones broken, body shattered, until she reached the nearby road. She flagged down headlights. 2 teenagers, Bill Penhollow and Darlene Gervais. They stopped their car and froze at the sight. Terry drenched in blood, her hair dripping red. She begged them to help Avra. They followed her back to the campsite. As they reached Avra's side, new headlights appeared in the distance. Fear surged. Was the attacker returning? The car slowed, then it passed. Still, the terror remained. The man could be anywhere. Police arrived after midnight. The campsite bore tire tracks, 2 bald rear tires, and uneven tread in the front. It was evidence, but not enough. Terry was rushed to the hospital, her body broken in pieces. Avra underwent a 9-hour brain surgery. Somehow, both survived. Neither could identify their attacker. Terry recalled only his outline: a young cowboy, lean and strong, in Western clothes. Avra's memory was gone, erased by trauma. Investigators chased leads. A local teenager named Richard Dick Dam drew suspicion. His girlfriend said he'd changed his truck tires right after the attack. He was abusive and volatile and failed 2 polygraph tests, though he had been high on methamphetamine at the time. The results were unreliable. Nothing tied him definitively to the crime. Another suspect was Richard Wayne Bud Godwin, a convicted murderer and predator. Some thought he had been in the park that night, but Terry insisted he wasn't the man she remembered, and so the case went cold. No charges, no arrest, no justice. Both women bore their scars into the years ahead. Avra lived with permanent vision damage. Terry carried the memory of that night into everything she did. Decades later, she wrote about it in her memoir, Strange Piece of Paradise, confronting not only her attacker, but also the silence that often follows violence against women. When she went back to review the case, she found that the official records, interviews, photos, even physical evidence had been lost. A brutal crime had been swallowed by history. The Klein Falls axe attack remains unsolved. The man who drove his truck over 2 young women and swung an axe into their tent was never found. But this story is more than horror. It is survival. Terry Gents refused to be silenced. Through her writing, she gave voice to the trauma that so many endure and to the resilience that allows survival against impossible odds. The night of June 22nd, 1977, has never been forgotten. It lingers like the echo of an axe in the dark, a reminder that evil can strike without warning, but also that courage can endure long after. Yet, as her story closed a painful chapter, the shadows of abduction and captivity were far from over. Across Europe, a young girl would vanish into another chilling nightmare, one that would grip an entire nation. Natasha Maria Kampusch was only 10 years old when her world would be forever changed, marking the next dark chapter in the stories of endurance, survival, and the human spirit tested beyond imagination. In the early morning of the 2nd of March, 1998, 10-year-old Natasha Maria Kampusch of Vienna vanished on her way to school. Witnesses reported seeing her being forced into a white minibus, though she later revealed that a single man, Wolfgang Psychlopil, had abducted her. Over the next 8 years, she was confined in a tiny, hidden cellar beneath his garage. Just 8 square meters, windowless, soundproof, and utterly isolated from the world outside. Psychlopil meticulously controlled every aspect of her life. For the first 6 months, Natasha was never allowed outside the cellar. As time went on, she gained limited freedom within the house, but was still sent back to her underground prison each night. He forced her into constant housework and cooking while imposing physical abuse, starving her, beating her, and sexually assaulting her to ensure total dominance. Initially, she was only permitted to watch taped television programs or listen to foreign radio stations, deliberately kept unaware of the publicized search for her. Despite these unimaginable conditions, Natasha retained her intellect and self-discipline. She educated herself with books, carefully observed her surroundings, and even attempted subtle, desperate signals for help whenever she could. Cyclopil maintained a constant climate of fear, claiming the house was booby-trapped and threatening to kill her if she tried to escape. Yet she quietly resisted, mentally and emotionally preparing for any opportunity. Her chance finally came on the 23rd of August, 2006. At 18, while cleaning Cyclopil's van in the garden, she seized a brief moment when he stepped away to answer a phone call. Running across neighboring gardens and streets, vaulting fences, she finally reached a 71-year-old neighbor, crying out, "I am Natasha Kampusch." Police were summoned, arriving shortly after. Cyclopil, realizing that capture was imminent, fled in his red BMW and later committed suicide by jumping in front of a train that very day. Reports and evidence confirmed he had planned this act long in advance, having told Natasha, "They will not catch me alive." Emerging from captivity, Natasha was physically fragile, stunted in growth, weighing only 48 kilograms and bearing scars from years of abuse, but her spirit was unbroken. She chronicled her ordeal in the memoir 3,096 Days, which was adapted into a film in 2013, repeatedly clarifying that her complex feelings toward Cyclopil were not Stockholm Syndrome, but a nuanced response to trauma. She reclaimed her autonomy, launching a personal website, hosting an Austrian talk show, and even purchasing the very house in which she had been imprisoned, ensuring the cellar would never become a dark shrine to her suffering. Eventually, she filled in the cellar, transforming the site of her trauma into a symbol of survival and agency. Natasha's story stands as a remarkable testament to human resilience, the capacity to endure unspeakable horror, reclaim one's life, and define existence on one's own terms. She dedicated herself to rebuilding a life that had been violently interrupted, cultivating independence and carefully navigating public attention while maintaining control over her personal narrative. Her approach to media, interviews, and creative projects demonstrates an unwavering commitment to transform her experience into something purposeful, using her story to raise awareness of long-term trauma, survival, and empowerment. Yet, while Natasha survived the clutches of a stranger, others have faced death at the hands of those they trusted most. Next, we turn to the harrowing story of Susan Walters, a woman whose own husband orchestrated a hitman attack against her. On September 6, 2006, Susan Kuhnhausen returned to her southeast Portland home after finishing another long shift as an emergency room nurse at Providence Portland Medical Center. She had spent 30 years working in emergency care, tending to patients in crisis, navigating violence and trauma on the job. But nothing in her professional life could have prepared her for what she was about to face in her own home. The house was strangely quiet. All the curtains were drawn, which was unusual. On the microwave, she spotted a note from her husband, Michael. "Sue, I haven't been sleeping. Had to get away. Went to the beach," he wrote. They had been married for nearly 2 decades, but the relationship had soured. Michael had grown bitter, controlling, and resentful after Susan filed for divorce. What Susan didn't know was that the man who had once promised to love her had set into motion a murder-for-hire plot to erase her from his life forever. She carried the day's mail into the bedroom, intending to change clothes. That's when it happened. From behind the door, a man sprang out, swinging a hammer. The first blow landed on Susan's left temple, splitting her skin open. She staggered but did not collapse. Her attacker wore yellow rubber gloves, and his eyes were locked with violent intent. He was Edward Dalton Haffey, a 59-year-old career criminal, a Vietnam veteran with a long history of violence who had been hired for $50,000 by her estranged husband to kill her. This wasn't a burglary gone wrong. This was premeditated murder. The hammer rose and fell again, but Susan's instincts kicked in. Years earlier, she had completed mandatory self-defense training through her job. The lessons had seemed abstract then. Close the distance, disrupt their rhythm, never stop fighting. But now, those strategies became the difference between life and death. Bleeding from her temple, she lunged at the man and slammed him against the wall. His only words that night were chilling. "You're strong." In that instant, Susan realized this wasn't random. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask where the safe was, she later recalled. It became quickly clear that his intent was murder. And I fought. The struggle lasted at least 14 minutes, an eternity of chaos, fear, and sheer willpower. Haffey swung the hammer wildly, but Susan wrestled it out of his hands and struck him back, screaming, "Who sent you?" He offered no answer, only violence. When he managed to rip the hammer away again, she changed tactics, grabbing him by the throat and squeezing until his face turned purple. Fear surged. If he went unconscious, would he come back stronger? She let go, bolting toward the door, desperate to escape. But he caught her in the hallway, pounding his fists into her face. Pinned and bleeding, Susan fought with everything she had. She sank her teeth into his arm, then his thigh, biting down hard enough to leave marks she hoped would identify him even if she didn't make it out alive. The bite disoriented him, buying her precious seconds. She flipped the momentum, dragging him to the ground, climbing on top, and locking him into a chokehold. He tried to buck her off, but Susan had learnt how to hold her ground. Her arm tightened, her grip unrelenting, until his body began to slacken. She screamed at him in desperation. "Tell me who sent you, and I'll call you a f***ing ambulance." But he stayed silent, his fight draining away. Moments later, he went limp. Breathless, battered, and covered in blood, Susan grabbed the hammer, fled the house, and rushed to her neighbors for help. When police and paramedics arrived, they pronounced Haffey dead at the scene. For Susan, the nightmarish truth was only beginning. Investigators searched the house and found Haffey's backpack. Inside were yellow gloves, a bottle of chocolate syrup, diabetes medication, and most damning of all, his planner. Under the date September 4th were the words, "Call Mike," followed by Michael Kuhnhausen's phone number. It didn't take detectives long to connect the dots. Michael and Haffey had worked together at an adult video store in Portland, and Haffey had a history with murder for hire. In 1994, he'd been convicted of orchestrating the murder of an ex-girlfriend, serving 9 years before his release. The man Susan had killed wasn't just a hired thug. He was a seasoned predator who had been paid by her husband to take her life. Michael fled when he realized Susan had survived, but police caught him a week later, only 10 miles from the very hospital where Susan worked. At first, he denied everything, but evidence and witness testimony mounted. A co-worker told police that Michael had offered him money to help arrange Susan's murder. The alibi he tried to build, leaving for the beach, crumbled under scrutiny. His motive was as petty as it was cruel. Susan had filed for divorce, and Michael, unemployed and unwilling to split assets, wanted the house and financial security for himself. On top of that, Susan's life insurance named her brother as the beneficiary, not Michael. Killing her, in his mind, was a way to settle the score. On August 30th, 2007, Michael Kuhnhausen stood before a judge and pleaded guilty to soliciting aggravated murder. Susan confronted him in court, holding up pictures of her battered, bloodied face. "You told police you found out I was okay," she said. "Do I look okay?" He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. For Susan, it wasn't enough. She filed for divorce immediately, reclaimed her maiden name, Walters, and later sued Michael for $1 million, determined that he would never have access to money that could fund another attempt on her life. Even with him behind bars, Susan couldn't rest. She moved into a new home, installed a panic button, and poured gravel around her house so she could hear footsteps if someone approached. She took up shooting at the range, always wary that Michael might send someone else. In interviews, she admitted that the fear never fully left her, and she was right to worry. Michael received early release for good behavior. But 3 months before his sentence was officially up, in September 2014, he died in prison of prostate cancer. For Susan, it was the final closure she needed. What could have remained only a story of betrayal and violence became something more. Susan Walters transformed her trauma into advocacy. She began working with women's strength and girl strength programs, teaching self-defense and sharing her experience. She partnered with the Oregon Crime Victims Law Center and, in 2017, helped create Case Companion, a free online resource to guide victims through the justice system. Police departments invite her to speak, and she regularly tells survivors the same message: fight back, don't give up, and never believe you're powerless. "How can you be a hero when you take someone's life?" she once said quietly. "I don't feel like a hero. I chose life. That's all I did. I chose life." Her story is proof that survival sometimes demands unimaginable strength. Susan Walters faced betrayal by the person closest to her, a brutal attack in her own home, and years of fear that he might try again. But she emerged alive, unbroken, and determined to protect others. Her battle was against a hitman sent by her husband. But the final case in this series brings us to a different kind of nightmare. The story of a young girl whose family was destroyed in one night, leaving her to face captivity and terror alone. And her courage to fight for freedom stunned the world. On the night of October 15th, 2018, in the small town of Barron, Wisconsin, a quiet home on Highway 8 was shattered by violence. Inside were James and Denise Kloss, living an ordinary life with their 13-year-old daughter, Jamie. They had no idea that for weeks, a stranger had been watching, planning, and waiting for the right moment. His name was Jake Patterson, a 21-year-old who had spotted Jamie boarding a school bus one morning. He didn't know her and had never spoken to her, and yet he decided she was the one. His obsession grew darker until it became a mission. He would kill anyone who stood between him and the girl. That night, Patterson pulled up to the Kloss home, armed with a shotgun. He pounded on the front door, his face hidden beneath a black ski mask. James, Jamie's father, rushed to the entryway, demanding to know who was there. Patterson's answer was the blast of his weapon, tearing through James in an instant. Denise and Jamie scrambled to a bathroom, barricading themselves inside. Jamie trembled as her mother dialed 911, her voice breaking as she whispered their desperate plea for help. On the recording, the only sound beyond her words is Jamie's terrified cry in the background. But before deputies could arrive, Patterson broke down the door. He forced Denise to bind her own daughter with duct tape before turning the shotgun on her too. With brutal efficiency, he ended her life, then dragged Jamie from the only home she had ever known. For the next 88 days, Jamie was held captive in Patterson's secluded cabin in Gordon, Wisconsin, nearly 70 miles away. Her world shrank to a single room. Patterson enforced silence, warning her that if she tried to escape, bad things would happen. He stacked boxes and weights around her to keep her cornered, controlled every move she made, and demanded her obedience. Jamie endured in silence, masking her fear with quiet compliance. But beneath it, her mind was working. She studied his patterns, noted the times he left the cabin, and kept alive a spark of determination. She would survive this. The community of Barron refused to let her memory fade. Volunteers scoured woods, fields, and ditches. Blue ribbons tied to trees and poles became a symbol of hope. Each day that passed felt like another step away from answers, yet Jamie's family never stopped believing she was out there. Across the country, strangers prayed for her safe return. What no one could see was that Jamie herself was holding on to the same hope, quietly plotting her chance. That chance came on January 10th, 2019. Patterson left the cabin for errands, believing Jamie was too broken and too afraid to move. But this time, she decided differently. She pulled on a pair of oversized shoes he had left behind and pushed past the barriers he had set up. Heart racing, she darted out the door into the freezing Wisconsin winter. For the first time in nearly 3 months, Jamie breathed free air. She ran through the snow, her hair tangled, her clothes hanging loose, until she came across Jean Nutter, a woman walking her dog. Breathless and trembling, Jamie managed to speak the words that would shatter the silence of her captivity. "I'm Jamie Kloss." Nutter, stunned but quick to act, wrapped her in safety and rushed her to the nearest home, calling 911. The girl the world thought might be gone forever had freed herself. When Patterson was arrested, he showed no remorse. In fact, he confessed openly, telling investigators that he had chosen Jamie at random and that once he saw her, "I knew she was the one." In court, Jamie did not speak, but her words came through a written statement, read aloud. In it, she confronted the man who had murdered her parents and stolen her freedom. He thought he could own me, but he was wrong. I was smarter. I was stronger. I was brave. He will never have any power over me again. It was the voice of a child who had been forced to grow up overnight, carrying scars no one could see, but also carrying strength most could never imagine. Jake Patterson pled guilty to 2 counts of intentional homicide and 1 count of kidnapping. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At his sentencing, he tried to claim he loved Jamie, even apologizing in a twisted attempt at remorse. But his words rang hollow against the brutality of his crimes. The judge, unmoved, made it clear that he would die behind bars. For the community of Barron, justice had been delivered, but the wounds of that October night would never fully heal. Jamie, however, refused to let her story end in tragedy. In the years since her escape, she has lived quietly with relatives, her life sheltered from the public eye. Yet her survival itself became a beacon, a reminder that even in the darkest captivity, courage can endure. Advocates for missing children hailed her as an inspiration. Survivors of violence saw in her the proof that escape was possible, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Jamie's name became not just a headline, but a testament to resilience. Jamie Kloss's escape was not just an act of courage, it was the echo of resilience we've seen time and again in the women whose stories we've uncovered tonight. From Mary Vincent's fight for survival after unthinkable violence to Cara Robinson's calm defiance in the face of a predator, to Elizabeth Smart's strength under captivity, to Jennifer Asbenson's desperate dash for freedom, to Michelle Knight's endurance through years of torment, to Terry Jentz's pursuit of truth, to Susan Walters' determination to outlast her attacker, each story is a testament to human will. These 9 women remind us that survival is not just about enduring the moment. It's about reclaiming life afterward, no matter how fractured, haunted, or scarred it may be. But their stories also leave us with questions. How many others never got the chance to escape? How many more are still out there, waiting for someone to notice, to fight, to survive? If these stories resonated with you, help us keep their voices alive. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next case we uncover. And while you're here, go ahead and click the videos and playlists showing on your screen right now. We've uncovered even more survival stories and chilling mysteries that you don't want to miss. Stay curious, stay safe. In the realm of the missing, a cold trail is frustrating for everyone. An eyewitness sighting is supposed to be the crucial lead that breaks a case, offering a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. But what about a trail of ghost sightings? In the perplexing stories we'll cover today, a glimpse of the lost didn't bring closure. It created a web of contradictions that made the search nearly impossible. These are not just people who vanished. They are people who were seen in their absence, leaving behind a haunting echo of what might have been. A quick note for our listeners. This episode contains descriptions of sensitive and potentially disturbing events. Viewer discretion is advised. Let's begin with a case that baffled investigators and continues to spark debate to this day. Joan Risch, October 24, 1961. The picture of suburban tranquility in Lincoln, Massachusetts, was shattered. Joan Risch, a 31-year-old wife and mother, vanished from her home, leaving behind a scene that was both disturbing and deeply confusing. But to understand the events of that day, we need to glimpse into the shadows of Joan's early life. Born Joan Carolyn Bard, her childhood was marked by profound tragedy. At the tender age of 8, she lost both her parents in a fire deemed suspicious. Imagine the indelible mark such a devastating event would leave on a young mind. Subsequently adopted, Joan's life took another dark turn, with later reports suggesting she endured childhood sexual abuse at the hands of her stepfather. Could these early traumas have played a silent role in the events of that autumn day in 1961? On that Tuesday morning, life in the Risch household appeared normal. Her husband, Martin, left early for a business trip. Joan saw her children, 4-year-old Lillian and 2-year-old David, through breakfast. She even took David to a neighbor's house before heading out with Lillian for a dental appointment. A seemingly ordinary morning, but by late afternoon, the ordinary had devolved into the nightmarish. A neighbor, Barbara Barker, became concerned when Lillian returned home alone, uttering the chilling words, "Mommy is gone, and the kitchen is covered with red paint." What Barbara found inside was a scene that defied easy explanation. Blood was smeared on the walls and floor. An overturned table hinted at a sudden disruption. The telephone, ripped from the wall, lay discarded in a wastebasket that had been inexplicably moved to the center of the room. But amidst this disturbing scene, there was no sign of Joan. Adding to the bewilderment, investigators found a relatively small amount of blood, not enough to suggest a life-threatening injury. And despite the visible smears, there were no bloody footprints. Had someone meticulously cleaned the floor, or was the source of the blood different than a struggle? The mystery deepened with the discovery that Joan had recently borrowed several books from the local library. Not just any books, but titles focusing on unsolved murders and disappearances. One book even contained a case with eerie similarities to her own. Did this point to a carefully orchestrated plan? Had Joan staged her disappearance, perhaps seeking an escape from a life we can only speculate about given her troubled past? But then came the sightings. Later that same afternoon, multiple people reported seeing a woman walking along nearby roads. A woman matching Joan's description, wearing similar clothing and with a scarf tied oddly around her chin. One witness even described seeing blood running down her legs as she walked along the median of a busy highway, cradling something to her stomach. Was this the disoriented Joan, injured and wandering? Or were these simply tragic coincidences, the mind playing tricks in the wake of a local tragedy? The sightings offered a flicker of hope, a sense that Joan might still be alive, but they also raised a host of unsettling questions. Why was she walking in that direction? What was she carrying or clutching? And why didn't anyone stop to help a woman who appeared so distressed? The trail of blood in the Risch home led to the driveway, ending near Joan's car. Had she gotten into another vehicle? Was she alone? Was she coerced? Despite extensive searches and countless theories, Joan Risch vanished without a trace. The sightings remain a haunting, unconfirmed chapter in a mystery that continues to baffle. What do you make of a case with so much apparent evidence, yet so few concrete answers? Our next case takes us south, to the humid bayous of Louisiana, where a pillar of the community vanished, only to seemingly reappear in the most unsettling of ways. 50-year-old Adam John, A.J. Bro, was a fixture in Houma. A salesman at the local clothing store for over 3 decades, he was known as a dependable and friendly man. But A.J. had faced his own battles, having conquered a long struggle with alcoholism. By 1991, he was 8 years sober and deeply involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, even serving as the secretary for the local chapter. His past struggles had made him empathetic and dedicated to helping others find sobriety. He had rebuilt relationships with his daughters and had recently come out to his family as gay, a revelation met with acceptance. On the evening of August 28, 1991, A.J. attended his regular AA meeting. Afterwards, he stopped at a convenience store to buy a quart of milk. He told the cashier he was heading home to his daughter, Tanya, but he never made it. The next morning, Tanya reported him missing. 2 days later, A.J.'s car was found abandoned in a park across the street from the AA club. Inside were his wallet and checkbooks. In the trunk, a bank bag containing $165 in AA funds. His keys and the milk were gone. Strangely, despite purchasing gas just hours before, the tank was nearly empty. There were no signs of a struggle, but AJ's daughter, Melissa, felt in her gut that something terrible had happened. It simply wasn't like her father to abandon his life and his responsibilities. The disappearance of AJ, a man so dedicated to his sobriety and his community, sent ripples of shock through Houma. And then came the reports, the unsettling whispers of sightings that only deepened the mystery. On the very day AJ's car was found, a longtime friend, Kenneth Pellegrin, claimed he saw AJ using a payphone outside another convenience store. But this wasn't the AJ he knew. He was wearing unfamiliar disheveled clothing and acting nervously. What made this sighting even more bizarre was the presence of a red compact car parked nearby, occupied by 3 men who seemed to be watching AJ. When Kenneth left the store, both AJ and the red car were gone. Later that same day, another acquaintance, living on a rural route outside of town, reported seeing a red compact car drive by, carrying AJ and 3 other men. The witness waved, but AJ, always known for his friendly demeanor, did not wave back. What was happening to AJ? Who were these men? And why was he acting so out of character? These sightings painted a disturbing picture. Was AJ in trouble? Had he fallen in with the wrong crowd? Or was something far more sinister at play? The fact that 2 separate witnesses who knew AJ well reported seeing him with 3 unidentified men in the same type of vehicle is undeniably chilling. Weeks later, a woman 30 miles away in Lockport claimed she saw a man resembling AJ, looking unkempt and smelling of alcohol, trying to sell frozen fish from a van. Was this a desperate AJ, having relapsed and fallen on hard times? Or was this a cruel trick of the light, a resemblance that offered false hope? His family vehemently denied that AJ would break his 8 years of sobriety and simply disappear. Despite these perplexing sightings, AJ Bureau has never been found. Was he a victim of foul play, as his daughters fear? Or did he, for reasons unknown, choose to walk away from the life he had rebuilt? What do you make of these fleeting glimpses of a man who seemed to vanish into thin air, only to reappear in the most unsettling and contradictory circumstances? It's at this point in the video that I want to take a moment to thank you, our incredible community. As of the making of this video, we've reached a milestone of 211 subscribers, and that's all thanks to you. Your support is what makes Merc Files possible, and we couldn't be more grateful. Please don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who loves a good mystery, and of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Now, let's get back to the Merc. 16-year-old Misty Nicole Murray vanished from her hometown of Goderic, Ontario. Misty was a typical teenager in many ways, but she was also at a pivotal point in her young life. Adopted at the age of 4, she was making plans to finally visit her biological mother, a significant journey of self-discovery. She had even packed a suitcase and saved $200 for the trip. On that day, Misty attended school. She even attempted to call her mother in the afternoon, though she didn't leave a message. This seemingly innocuous act would become a haunting reminder of a life abruptly interrupted. After school, Misty was never seen again. The days following her disappearance were filled with a flurry of reported sightings, each offering a fragile thread of hope that Misty was still alive. A friend claimed to have spoken to her in a shop the very next day. 3 teenagers reported seeing her walking along a highway between towns. Another teenager believed they saw her at a local fair, wearing her distinctive green Seaforth band jacket. These initial sightings, however, quickly faded into uncertainty. Over the next 2 weeks, more than 20 sightings were reported in London, Ontario, a larger city some distance away. But none of these could be confirmed and were ultimately deemed not credible by investigators. The promising leads dissolved like morning mist. Then, the case took a dark and shocking turn. Several months after Misty vanished, police charged her adoptive father, Steve Murray, with her murder. The community was stunned. But in 1997, after a trial that gripped the town, Steve Murray was acquitted by a jury. The defense argued vehemently that the police investigation was flawed, even presenting 13 witnesses who placed Steve elsewhere at the time police alleged he was disposing of Misty's body. Despite the acquittal, the shadow of suspicion lingered, a heavy burden for a family already reeling from the loss of their daughter. Adding another layer of tragedy, years later in 2002, a glimmer of hope emerged from an unexpected place. Vancouver, British Columbia, thousands of miles away. A young woman calling herself Mallory Morrigan Lane, living on the streets and accessing youth services, bore a striking resemblance to what Misty Murray would look like at age 21. Social workers who interacted with Mallory were 99% positive she was Misty. The resemblance was uncanny, down to a distinctive gap between her front teeth. Even more compelling were stories Mallory shared about her background, details that mirrored Misty's early life in Nova Scotia and her biological mother's experiences. But when confronted with the possibility that she was Misty Murray, Mallory became hysterical and fled. She refused to provide valid identification and eventually stopped seeking social benefits rather than reveal her true identity. The hope of a resolution, of finally finding Misty alive, was once again snatched away. Misty Murray has never been found. Did the initial sightings offer a genuine glimpse of a runaway teenager? Was the Vancouver sighting a miraculous discovery that tragically slipped through their fingers? Or was the truth far darker, hidden beneath the surface of a seemingly peaceful town? What do you make of a case where the most promising sighting ended in fear and flight, leaving a family forever searching for answers? Our exploration of deceptive sightings continues in the breathtaking landscapes of Ecuador, where a young man with a bright future vanished on a seemingly innocuous hike, sparking a series of fleeting images that offered no solace. June 16th, 2013. For the Riga family, a vacation to Baños, Ecuador, should have been a time of celebration. Their son, August, had just graduated as valedictorian of his high school class and earned a prestigious Fulbright scholarship. He was a young man full of promise, and this trip was a well-deserved reward. Baños, a popular tourist destination, was considered relatively safe. On that fateful day, August, his parents, and his younger brother went for a hike on a local trail, a loop that should have taken only a few hours. August, full of youthful energy, walked ahead of his family. But just 10 minutes later, when his parents and brother reached a pavilion at the top of the mountain, August was gone. He wasn't there. He wasn't at their hotel when they returned. He had no money or passport with him. Local authorities, the Ecuadorian military, and even the US State Department launched an immediate search, but no trace of August was found. His family insisted that their intelligent son, who even spoke fluent Spanish, could not have simply gotten lost on a well-marked trail visible from their hotel. Initially, authorities considered the possibility of a kidnapping, but no ransom demand ever materialized. Interpol circulated August's photo throughout Latin America, but the vast search yielded nothing. And then came the whispers, the unconfirmed sightings that offered a cruel kind of hope. Several days after his disappearance, a witness reported seeing someone matching August's description in the back of a pickup truck heading towards the Amazon region. This sighting fueled the terrifying possibility that August had been abducted. But why? He had no valuables on him. Who would want to take him, and for what purpose? The trail of that sighting went cold. Later, the family spoke of other credible sightings, but the locations were kept secret by investigators, presumably to protect witnesses and avoid alerting potential captors. These fleeting glimpses of August offered a painful paradox, the hope that he was alive, battling against the agonizing reality that he remained missing. Years have passed since August Reiger vanished. The vibrant young man who stood at the cusp of a brilliant future remains lost. Was he a victim of a crime, spirited away into the vast Amazon? Did he suffer a tragic accident on the mountain, his body yet undiscovered? Or did one of those unconfirmed sightings hold the key to a truth that remains elusive? What do you make of a case where a disappearance in broad daylight on a popular trail leads to a single, unsettling sighting, pointing towards an entirely different fate? Our final journey into the deceptive nature of sightings takes us to the bustling streets of New York City and the quiet shores of New Jersey, in the case of a brilliant woman whose life took a sudden, heartbreaking turn. 35-year-old Renee Lamanna was by all accounts exceptional. By the age of 20, she had earned both bachelor's and master's degrees. She served in the Peace Corps, mastering French and Arabic. In 1994, she was studying nuclear medicine technology, but beneath this veneer of achievement, Renee was struggling. The end of a decade-long relationship with an Afghan immigrant taxi driver triggered a severe mental health crisis. On January 8, 1994, Renee was found wandering the streets of Queens, New York, in a disoriented state, barefoot and in her nightclothes. Following a psychiatric evaluation, she was taken to her sister's home in Ocean City, New Jersey. But just an hour after arriving, Renee, for no apparent reason, ran out into the freezing temperatures, still inadequately dressed. The last confirmed sighting of Renee was later that evening at a bar in Somers Point, New Jersey, where she was reportedly acting strangely. Her bathrobe was found discarded just 2 blocks away. A bloodhound tracked her scent between 2 nearby homes, but the trail ended there. Had she been offered shelter? Had she gotten into a car? Or had she simply succumbed to the elements? Then came the truly unsettling sightings. Months later, in May 1995, there was an unconfirmed report of her being seen in New Jersey, but the sighting that sent chills down investigators' spines came later that year. Renee was reportedly seen in a Manhattan subway station, looking at a missing person flyer bearing her own face. This haunting image fueled the theory that Renee was suffering from a dissociative fugue, a rare psychiatric disorder involving sudden, unexpected travel away from home or the workplace, accompanied by amnesia for one's identity or other autobiographical information. If this was the case, Renee might be alive, wandering, unaware of who she truly was. Over the years, numerous unconfirmed sightings of a woman resembling Renee were reported across the eastern United States. Then, in 2014, a promising lead emerged from Asheville, North Carolina. A witness took several photographs of a woman who looked remarkably like an age-progressed image of Renee. This woman even told people she was looking for her family and gave a police officer a similar alias. Hope surged that Renee had finally been found. Tragically, fingerprints confirmed that the woman was not Renee. The hope evaporated, leaving behind the bitter taste of disappointment. Renee's parents passed away without ever knowing what happened to their daughter. Her sister still holds on to the hope that one day Renee will be found. Was Renee a victim of foul play after leaving the bar that cold night? Or did she, as those subway and out-of-state sightings suggest, embark on an unintentional journey, her past and identity lost to her? What do you make of a case where the most compelling sightings point not to a crime, but to a heartbreaking loss of self? The sightings in these cases, instead of providing clarity, have only deepened the murk, leaving us to ponder the fragile nature of memory and the enduring mystery of human disappearance. Thank you for joining us on Murk Files. If you found this video intriguing, please consider giving it a like, sharing it with a friend, and subscribing to the channel for more mysteries. If you have any information about the cases discussed in today's episode, please contact the authorities. Your tip, no matter how small it may seem, could be the key to bringing closure to these families. Stay curious, stay safe.